Thanks for coming. Thanks for doing your homework. Even if you didn't do your homework, you're welcome here. So I'm just going to do preliminary remarks about the nature of the Secret River book, and I'm not going to reference which edition I'm talking about. It's just some general ideas of the story, a few comments, and then Kenneth and I will be peppering you with questions to get your thoughts. So the narrative of The Secret River is in the form of a quest romance where a child enters an idyllic landscape in search of an answer or a solution to a real-world problem. The protagonist, Calpurnia's name, is likely an allusion to Calpurnius, a Roman poet of the 1st century who wrote Bucolica, in homage to Virgil. Rawlings created a heroine who endures experiences which have deeply personal meanings to her events in her own life. Hard times had come to the forest, she says, and Rawlings herself experienced real hunger when she describes being at the beginning of the Depression down to a can of tomato soup and a box of soda crackers. Remember that? Therefore, the justification for Calpurnia is to alleviate the pain of her community and to save her family from starvation. And she undertakes this quest by beginning with a visit to Mother Albertha, which of course means all birth, and she is the omniscient great mother figure. The quest continues as Calpurnia moves through the forest. All of a sudden she heard a sound like music. The forest had ended. Calpurnia found the secret river. The river's plenty emphasizes the life-giving properties of nature, which Rawlings extolled in many of her works, especially Cross Creek. Calpurnia's lures are not living or dead animals, but rather paper roses, and with them she catches an abundance of fish. This enhanced the magic nature of the secret river. On her way back to the village, Calpurnia encounters needy predators, a bear and a panther, with whom she shares her plenty. She also rewards Mother Albertha and gives her father some fish to sell at the market. And in turn, he gives some to their hungry neighbors without money to buy them. Because times have changed from hard to soft, Calpurnia is unable to return to the secret river. Indeed, the journey quest has matured her, and she understands that the secret river is inaccessible to adults. The historic content of the secret river also needs to be considered. When the book came out in 1955, the parents of children reading it would have been grown up during the Great Depression. Many of them would have been able to relate to the deprivation as described in the beginning of the book. The book would have engaged and conveyed an important, empowering message to children concerning their ability to bring about change in their own community. So that gives you sort of a resume, sort of a summary of the book, and now we have some questions that we'd like to address to you, and we're encouraging you to talk because professors can only talk so much. So I'm going to give the first question to Kenneth.
We'll see. We are on. So welcome to book club, and it's good to see everybody, especially after such a stimulating and long but stimulating day. It's really nice of you to join us. Also, there's a lot of expertise in-house, so we know that really. I think we're mostly just nosy about your experiences with the book and with the kinds of things that stood out for you as you encountered it and maybe encountered it again. And it is kind of astonishing when you think about this book. I mean, it was published in 1955, it was republished in the 90s, here we are in 2026, There was just this opera that was staged again by Orlando Opera, which I know Jennifer was able to attend, and fantastic. So Paul was there. I was supposed to be helping with it, and I had a medical issue with my mother and couldn't attend, so I did not get to see it. So I'm very curious about that. But the kind of ongoing life of this text is sort of incredible. Right, and there's probably all kinds of reasons for its continuity across the decades, but it's a long time for a picture book or any literary work to have this kind of impact and to still reverberate, right? So I think that's fascinating, and I think Flo got at maybe some of the reasons why it's stayed with us. Its meaning has been both the same and different, I think, probably over the decades. So if it's okay with you, I thought we would start with just what are your experiences with reading this or rereading it, especially if you reread it recently. And I think, this maybe the second question that's kind of part of that is, which edition did you work with, and did that have any kind of impact on your sort of sense of the story, of how it works visually, how it works narratively, maybe together, and especially maybe if you had a chance to look at both versions, maybe together or over a course of time. So we're just kind of curious about what strikes you about this and what was your experience as readers. And I can, if you want, I can kind of run around and be like, Phil Donahue and then over here. So we have a question.
I also would like Betty Jean over here. Jennifer, I'd like to hear your impression of the opera too. You feel like talking?
Well, just very quick historical perspective. I read it first in manuscript form when I was really doing my research on Marjorie and Zora, because the original intent was that they were going to write, Zora was going to write a cracker book, Marjorie was going to write a book about a black family, and they were going to dedicate their books to each other. Of course, that didn't happen. Well, it did happen with Zora's book. Her book was actually dedicated to Marjorie and to Mrs. Hollard, who was a mutual friend of theirs. And then there's a whole other story. Maybe another year, if I'm still alive next year, I can do my latest Zora research, because there's some pretty astonishing stuff about what happened around that time. But the expression color struck had not really come home to me what it really meant until you all did the color struck production in St. Augustine, and I have started calling my black friends and asking them to explain what color struck meant to them. Zora did so much groundbreaking in her life, and she would just freak people out sometimes, because she did a lot of code talking, she did a lot of smack talking, kind of, and to both sides. But she also was a very big believer in race amity, which is my latest project on Zora, because she attended the first race amity conference that happened at Howard right during that bloodbath, that horrible mob violence in the summer of 1923. All that is preamble. So it was very significant to me, and I think I saw in your office one day, Flo, the original drawings that were done, thinking maybe, I think Robert Camp thought that maybe they were for the book, and all the black people were really black, right?
Kind of caricatured.
Right. You see how black, right? But when the book actually came out, and I think there's a good bit of discussion in the Julia letter, certainly after Marjorie died, about how this book was going to get published. I think that Norm Burke had something to do with it. I'm not sure if he did much good. But if you compare the original version of the book, you'll see that it's color struck in motion, because Calpurnia is not black. She's sort of a nice beige. It's actually not a painting, it's the color of the paper, if you look at it. Yeah, Marjorie is, you see, it goes along with the color of the paper.
It was taboo to portray
Right, exactly.
African-American children.
That was, I assure you, that was not Marjorie's intent. She wanted that child black. That was the original idea. She was gonna write about a black family, Zora was gonna write about a white family, and that was it. So it's taken all this time, and I'm sure of it. I looked in the wee hours right after I found the poem this morning in your book. I wanted to see, to check, to make sure, because sometimes there are great variations. I have a copy of the new print book. I wanted to make sure that it came through on the Kindle copy, that Calpurnia is just as black in Kindle as she is in the print. So she finally made it. We finally made it past, we broke the color struck boundary.
Thank you. So, and actually, thank you so much. And also, Flo is not tooting her own horn enough. She's written a gorgeous article about those two editions and about this question of sort of diversity representation and how was that handled and what was Rawlings kind of thinking and rethinking about it. And it's just a terrific piece, and it speaks to many of those issues. And it is. I have learned a little bit about the history of picture book representation of Florida children, and there are very, very few representations of Black kids in picture books, even now. And at this point, it was very rare, and I think Elvira Garner might have written the only book that was sort of featured an African American child, Ezekiel. There was a sequel. But it's very much in dialect, and I would argue it's pretty racist. Yeah. And so I think at least there's a conversation to be had there, and it's the conversation that Rawlings was trying to avoid. So thank you, that's so helpful. Let me dash over to this side of our room here. Oh, look at this, I love this picture. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, my comment is very similar to the very educated woman over there. I'm not very educated in this stuff, but I wanted to say I read the sepia book. That's what I call it. And I don't need a microphone.
You might.
I read the sepia book, and I saw the other book because I got it from the library. I'm new to this group, and I rejected that one in the library because, it's really rude to take two books out at the same time because somebody else wants that book. I'm glad I didn't read that one. I'm glad I read the sepia book because I couldn't tell for sure what race she was. And you know what? I didn't really care because it was the story. So I really didn't like this book when I've seen it because it forces you to think of the girl only as a Black child in a Black family. So nothing wrong with that. It's just that I appreciated the fact that I read the old book. That's all I wanted to say.
I think that's great. The ambiguity of the first edition is actually kind of positive in a lot of ways. It's strategic,
yes.
Right? And the universality of the story is something that people have continued to comment on. So I think you're absolutely right about that.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
You started your discussion by saying why has it continued to be popular? I think that the publication of this second book is certainly a testament to that. Because this would never have been published if they didn't think it was a time-honored story and that it would stand the test of time.
Which it does.
And if you'll remember, some of you were at the conference here in DeLand. These authors were at that conference and presented their images. I don't think the book was out at the time. I remember seeing it on slides. And it was so exciting because,
So the DeLand conference was my very first Marjorie Kinnear Raleigh conference. I was very pregnant. So I know it was 14 years ago, almost 15 years ago, because Alice turns 15 in June. So yeah, I was very pregnant at that conference here. It was about 15 years ago. And what I thought was really interesting is, it was the couple that printed this, they were an interracial couple, and they did a lot of work on illustrating children's book. They did, I think, one of the Wrinkle in Time editions. They were kind of famous illustrators, and I thought it was really interesting that they chose this because they wanted to kind of feature that kind of to have different representation in children's literature than what they were seeing, which I think is really beautiful. So that was really nice.
Yes,
the other thing I wanted to say, which is kind of a commercial side of it, is most of the people that come to Cross Creek on tours have never heard of the Secret River, have never heard of it. And who is this by, kind of thing. And of course, we don't have the older edition. We do have it in the bookcase. But this book, this edition sells. It's one of our, we have only about 5 books, and this one is way up there on what sells. And people buy it, grandparents buy it for their kids for Christmas, grandchildren for Christmas. It is a very popular book. It's not easy to get. It's one of those that I have to order a month ahead to get a shipment sometimes. But it's consistently a good seller. So it's out there, and people are looking at it and buying. I'm just saying.
That's one thing that I was going to say very simply. I was like, I probably would not read the other one to my granddaughter because it's outdated, but this I can read to my granddaughter, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautifully illustrated. I fell in love with it just because of the
front flap, you know, the
yes, all of it, every part of this I just love. Yeah. So it seems really simple, you know, that you're drawn in by that, but I am, you know, and kids are, and so I just think having this edition just makes all the difference.
They're both very visually compelling, I think, in different ways. I personally love the first one too, but they are quite different. And I think that's actually, and they are something maybe related to different needs. Ginger.
Okay, when I was growing up, we've always had Secret River. We've had the sepia version in our home. Mom read it to us. We loved it. We knew the story. When the new version came out, at first I was appalled by it. I thought, it is so bright, it is so rainbow fish meets Secret River. But then my mom sat down with the grandbabies, and she opened up the picture book, and their eyes glowed. And we saw the value of the new illustrations, the value of the color, the value of the excitement, the bright iridescence, and it is a favorite. Now, do I treasure my sepia version of the Secret River? Absolutely. It stays in a plastic bag to protect it because we have several versions, but this is probably the most pristine one.
Put it in paper, don't store it.
Well, I have it in an acid-free. Oh, I have it in an acid-free. I just brought it today instead. But the rainbow fish, or the Secret River, the new version, that is what's out for the grandbabies to look at and to enjoy.
Yeah, that's gorgeous and gorgeously put. Is it okay to pick on Ashley and ask you to say a little bit about your interview with them? I think I might have stolen those microphones, so I'll let me keep this one and this too.
Well, it's really not my interview. Sandy Dunavant interviewed Diane Dillon and really spoke to the historical significance because Diane and Leo both were Caldecott winners and did so much in order to provide representation. And so I think we're so fortunate in the society to have someone like Sandy to have done this interview, and of course we're fortunate in the Rawlings world to have this beautiful edition of this book.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yes, please. That was closer.
I had read this 1975 article about the Secret River by Lockie and Galbraith, and what I really noticed about it was that there were so many levels of myth, like Albertha, and that was very contemporaneous, I think, to like Eudora Welty, and a lot of the authors at that time had many levels of mythology references in the book, and this is just rich with that, which I just love.
Could I ask Chloe? Chloe, do you know, has there ever been a consideration of publishing an edition of this with it dedicated to Zora as my transition?
Interesting.
I don't know that.
Huh, interesting, yeah.
Okay. No, I don't know
Wouldn't
that.
that be amazing? They would sell even better.
Yeah,
Right here in the front.
Marjorie does say in her letters, when she's referring to the story, that Calpurnia is a Negro child. Okay, there's no fudging about that. And but the reason why it didn't get published at the time during Marjorie's life, she was writing this about 1947, in the middle of the throes and the agony of Sojourner composition, right? She was like, I'm taking a break. She's writing to Max, and she's saying, and before Max died, but then after Max died, it was even worse. Charlie Scribner, but her whole take on it was that this was a Negro child, and that the problem with publication was going back and forth with Alice Dagliash, who was the children's editor at Scribner's at the time. And so Julia's letters back and forth to Scribner's and Marjorie's intention when she was writing it was that it was going to be published as a picture book for, you know, with a Negro protagonist, but that the illustrations that Bob Camp came up with were too, shall we say, yeah, like derogatory. And Max was also writing to her and saying, do you want to put a little Negro dialect in there? And Marjorie's like, no, just like that, like flatly no. I don't want it to be sort of patronizing. I don't want it to be a white lady trying to imitate Negro dialect. As a matter of fact, what Betty Jean was saying about Zora was that Zora wrote Seraphon the Swanee with white protagonist, white cracker protagonist, and dedicated it to Marjorie. And this was the reciprocal kind of agreement that they had, but it kind of reflected their friendship. But yes, it would have been really nice to have it dedicated to Zora Neale Hurston, or the memory of Zora
I
Neale
mean,
Hurston.
even without the real color of her skin, it would have been nice. And did Julie have anything to do with that? You know?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, according to her article, it was a debate at Scribner's. It was a Scribner's publication.
It's interesting, if I could just say something really quick, it's interesting that in the 90s, when the Dillon edition was published, that was also the period that we saw picture book biographies for kids about Zora. And not long after, or beginning in that period, collections of Zora's tales interpreted as picture books and attributed to Zora as author. So you have in the 1990s, both Rawlings and Hurston kind of being associated, again, with sort of materials for a diverse audience and a wide audience, and new interpretations, but also gestured back to both of them as forward-looking, inventive, amazing thinkers and writers. So just an interesting
And very much influencing each other.
Yeah, absolutely, and the influence continuing in the afterlives, right, and the kind of continuing, I love that. So, sorry, Jennifer, I didn't mean to.
No, this is not nearly as literary as what you guys are talking about, except I want to talk a little bit about the opera for a second, as Flo asked us to. So, a few things. One, I understand 5 years ago, my mom is a member of Orlando Opera, learned about this, worked with you, Flo, and that's the first time we donated $5K to Orlando Opera when they first inaugurally put the opera on. 5 years, no, Mom's nodding no.
Yeah, the time is right,
Okay, the time is right.
but what happened?
2020?
Different, I think. It doesn't matter really. I'm glad we all take credit for it because it's a good cause. But actually what happened was that, similar to what you just said, I also had a notice saying that they were looking for sponsors of the various members of the cast. And of course, the second I saw that, although I'm supposed to be a parliamentarian, I took the great liberty of making a motion online to membership, and Marcia Phelps seconded. We got back 33 yeses, we got 1 no. The 1 no was very sensible, and she let me know right away. The reason it was no was because she was pretty sure I would not have checked with Aunt Pierce to see if we had the $5,000. So after that, of course, it carried, and we then proceeded to have a relationship with her, which we all need to be very careful that it's Opera Orlando, because when I once said to the gentleman who's
Gabriel.
And I managed to say Orlando Opera, he was this little pause. And like, lady, if you're smart enough to get somebody to give us $5,000, would you mind being smart enough to learn the name of the organization? So he corrected me very carefully.
So then, 5 years later, you fill that, because I don't know, and I'll just talk about.
Well, we ended up, both Gabriel Presser, who was the executive director of the Opera Orlando, and the librettist, Mark Campbell, and the composer, Stella Sohn, who's based in Gainesville. They came to the library, they read the original manuscript. I talked to them at great length about the characterizations and the different, and they studied this intensely. They took copies of the manuscript, and then they worked on it, they workshopped it, etc. And then the proposal, as Claire worded it to the society, we ended up doing a subvention or a subsidy for the role of Marjorie Cannan Rawlings, who's in the opera as sort of like the omniscient kind of write what you know kind of thing, like how the book came about. And so Emily Pulley played the part of Marjorie Rawlings in that first production, which 2021, is that right? Or 22? Yeah, I think they started coming in 2021, and we were like partially shut down because of COVID and all that stuff. It was a real ordeal, but I think it was in December. It was right before Christmas, so we went to the world premiere, and then they decided to do a reprise of the production this spring. So that was the second round, and of course it was much easier. We figured we did have the money, and we went ahead and underwrote again the role of Marjorie Cannan Rawlings, and I can't remember the name of the singer because I didn't get to go either. The Marjorie, yeah. It was Emily Pulley the first time, but I think it was a different.
How did they have Marjorie in the Secret River?
In the opera, yeah.
Oh, you didn't see it? Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Well, yeah, it was the beginning, it's like opening scene
It
is like
opens with
Marjorie
her.
Rawlings like struggling with writing The Sojourner, right? And she's,
We watched the movie version of it.
yeah, we did. Yeah, we watched the movie. There's a movie version of it, like they videoed it. You got
We
it.
went to the theater in Gainesville, the last conference that we had in Gainesville. We went downtown.
The Hippodrome. We went to the Hippodrome Theater, and Gabe was there, and Stella Sohn was there, and
And they had those really good cocktails.
yeah.
That were named after, they had the special ones. that
My
were named
first
after the
Boulevard DNA, inspired by Marjorie Rawlings' bourbon.
So when Angela and Paul and Chris and I went to the opera, the reprisal at Mead Gardens, it was a beautiful night outdoor. You sat in camp chairs, and it couldn't have been more of a perfect setting for it. Because the trees and the wind was rustling through the trees, it was stunning. I've just sent Ashley some of the photos that we took that night, and bootleg video, which we will not ever share on our website, but just a little bit to capture it.
Yeah, it says I don't have access to view them though. It
Okay.
says request access.
Okay, well, anyway, it was a lovely, lovely night, and we were really proud. And then we all went and chatted with Stella, and she was so lovely. And we said, how were you inspired to write this opera? And she said, well, actually, my friend, whose name we've forgotten, but I will
She was
remember.
standing right there.
She said, my friend read the book and several years ago said to me, this would make a great story for an opera. So that's how Stella learned it, and the friend was standing next to her. And that was very cute because she was so proud of the one that kind of had conceptualized that this book would be a terrific opera. So I just wanted to share that as a nice moment for us. And we can share that photo of us with Stella and the friend whose name we'll find out.
The name of the friend on email.
Yes,
You sent
yeah.
it to me, I still have it.
Yeah, we have
I
it.
just
We'll supply that later. Paul wrote to Stella afterwards, but
Well, we don't want to talk about that. It came back returned undeliverable. I sent it to her creative management agency, which is the address I got on the internet, so I'm going to try her, I guess through UCF, I'll send it to her.
Oh, no.
Sure.
I'd like to start a movement so that we could have it annually, like a Marlin Night Visitor. do the ends.
Oh, the underwrite. That's a question.
We, in the most generous way.
Yes, the collective.
Collective week.
And they don't have them all when I remember they.
They've done it at Opera Orlando.
Oh, but they do.
Oh.
Used to be on television.
Yeah.
Like a nutcracker.
Yeah.
That's great.
I like this idea. So what do you think it is that makes the narrative so powerful and compelling? I mean, I'm just curious in terms of the story itself, right? Because the images are so suggestive and you know, just sort of inspiring. The storyline it's really well crafted, right? It's very deliberate. It's actually, when I reread it a few days ago, I'd forgotten how long it is and how detailed it is in places. And what do you think makes it work? What makes it tick?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, especially after Ashley's talk this morning, seeing like a small girl who goes out into the woods on an adventure by herself and like visits the wise woman and goes through the woods and has perils unknown, like with bears and panthers, and then when she comes back, she saves the entire family from like starvation. And then it ends there. So she does not have to do all the other stuff, right? She doesn't have to like, you know, grow up and get married and leave that behind. She is like she's the heroine. And not only how often do you have a small girl be a heroine of a book in this particular way, but a small black girl being the heroine of a story in this particular way when it was written. I mean, I think it's really...
And it's the quest to the underworld, it's all the mythology.
Only she's the hero on the quest. She is the hero.
Resonant on many levels, I think.
No, it's extraordinary, and she feeds the entire community, because when she gives the fish back, they feel so strong again. They can go work and do their thing, and then it's just she saves the world. And it's a girl. It's true. It's a girl power, Supergirl kind of. Yes, yeah.
Fishes, no loaves, but fishes.
Yes, exactly. That's one of the things one of the threads there, in addition to all the mythology that's been pulled out. But yeah, it's kind of so powerful.
And what struck me in that is all the giving, you know, instead of fear, you know, when she gives. And even if you don't say thank you, you know, she still acknowledges it. And the same thing with her dad, you know, when you brought up, he gave, and, you know, just trust, you know, I'll give and you can pay me when you can, type of thing. And I think that's such a good value that the book lends to people.
That is such a good point. And I was so afraid she was going to wind up with no fish. I was like, what happened? Or what happened? And not only does she give, but she gives more and more, right? So the owl gets 1, right? The bear gets 2, the panther gets 3. I'm like, it's good she didn't run into any more animals, because, you know, I mean, but just that selflessness, like you said, and that kind of just profound, you know, just, and I don't, she does seem, there's the funny thing about the thing is funny about the thank you part, where she does like a little bit of a, you know, it's like, how come some say thank you so dope, but she makes up another poem and kind of processes that. Yeah, I think that is huge. What else? Yeah.
So is there any evidence that Zora ever saw any part of this book while Martha was writing?
Not that I know of.
You know, her life was fraught. You know, this is around this time that right after her book was published, that she was arrested, and basically Scribner's bailed her out. And when I've done my Zora program twice for a race amity group, and it always just brings tears and goosebumps when so far it's always been a person of color who says that they think of Sandra Bland when they hear the story of how Scribner sent in Whitney Yarrow and Max's replacement, and they went in at night. Zora was already in jail. They went in, they had to take $1,200 in cash to get her out. And I will always believe, to my dying day, there was at least partly Marjorie's telegram to Charlie Scribner, who had made the very male offhand remark, oh, Zora's been arrested on a minor sex charge, right? And Marjorie said, Charlie, sex is never minor. Like, in other words, it doesn't matter if she's innocent or not, that if she had been left in that DC jail, and Burroughs Mitchell was the man's name, wasn't it? That replaced, Burroughs took her home, and she spent 3 days with he and his wife Helen until she had enough money. Marjorie was giving money, lots of people sent money, but it was really Scribner's. I mean, I really credit Scribner's for getting her out of that damn jail that night.
What year was that?
That was I think it was 47, wasn't it? It was right after Max had died.
Yeah, Max died in June 47, so that summer probably.
Go ahead.
I have something about, it's the same subject, but a little bit a different point of view. I was immediately struck by the beauty of the faces, the detail, and it was very different from the beauty of the landscape, which was a little bit more magical. You have leaves turning into birds and fish, but the faces were so gorgeous. And I'm thinking about how to get a kid to read. Well, the first thing you do is you give your kid this picture book with gorgeous pictures that they're just in awe of. And they want to look at the pictures, and then the next one, and then the next one. And I was thinking about the camp in the summer that we discussed last night. How even for middle schoolers, who are not little kids, but to get them hooked on reading, this would be the kind of thing they could see these faces, want to see them again, want to know what the faces are saying, want to know what the story is, to follow with the pictures. And this is a way, I think, to hook kids into reading. And I think that they could relate to that, and that's just my thought, especially if they weren't advanced readers to begin with.
Yeah, I'm more and more convinced that that's the book that we should propose, at least to this teacher. Yeah, I'll meet with him and we'll, but thank you for those remarks. I think it's like the empowering, like kids, a lot of times their frustration is, I'm not in control. These adults are all in control and they're driving me crazy. They're doing things, they're making me do things I don't want to do, and I can't help them, or my family's in dire straits and there's nothing I can do. That feeling of helplessness and frustration, and this book assuages those feelings.
I was just going to say that to your point, that this book is an empowerment to those children who may feel that they don't have any say in their surroundings and what they do. This can give them, some empowerment, encouragement into, yeah, I can go out and do this. I can go and think and dream and think about what I want to do to better my surroundings, my community, better myself, and better my situation for the people around me, and this can help them. And they can also use the pictures and create their own story through it, and then eventually also read the script that is in the book.
If they're young enough, I can remember the absolute rage when I think I was 7 or 8, and my aunt and uncle sent me Dr. Seuss, and I was reading Nancy Drew. I mean, I think you do have to, that's a young child. If you're an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old or something like that, I think you'd be offended to get an obvious children's
That's why they see it and understand what it is.
I don't think so.
No, I've taught 3rd graders, and I've taught 8th graders, and they would both ages, all through those ages, would love them.
Yeah, we have to look at, those of you that weren't at the trustees meeting last night, I'm going to give you really brief background. What we were discussing was to support a teacher, a middle school teacher at PK Young Laboratory School at the University of Florida with reluctant readers, with struggling readers, and we're pretty sure it's middle school level. And we were saying, which book should we buy, like in quantity, to give to these 60 some odd students? And so we're going back and forth, and somebody said Secret River, and I was like, no, we should read the Yearling if they're old enough. And so the whole idea is that they're struggling readers, And so giving them something that they might enjoy and be able to master quickly might be good.
I am agreeing with you. And I've taught too many grades to talk about. But I've used picture books with, and younger children's literature with middle school kids. And they are going to have the same conversations that we've had. They're going to look at it, they're going to dissect it, they're going to talk about it, they're going to get meaning from it. I love using picture books with middle school kids because the pictures draw them in. So if you have reluctant readers, it's going to draw them in. And I think that would be a great choice.
I've also taught in the middle school for about 15 years, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and throughout those grades, there are picture books in every single classroom. I'm from Boston. There are picture books in the math classroom, even in the advanced, algebra in 8th grade. There are picture books everywhere. And for a reluctant reader to have a choice, should I have a novel, The Yearling, that I'm a reluctant reader, am I gonna read this big novel that has no pictures? Or am I gonna get a book of my own that has these gorgeous pictures and I can follow along, maybe I can't read all of it, maybe I can. And even the ones that it's no problem to read, they get, while they're reading easily, they get to look at this beautiful treasure.
Another thing with older kids, they still like to be read to. So if a teacher would read The Yearling, that would draw them in. And then, you know what you just did? You handed me a mic, and I'm going to tell you, if you have reluctant readers, give them a mic. I'm not kidding. I've done this with kids. They love the mic. So I had mics, and the kids started reading out loud. Anyway, there's a million things that you can do either book, but.
It can be karaoke as well.
Karaoke.
Yeah. So.
I've done lots of, if you have really reluctant readers, do a puppet.
I just thought of one more thing.
They're not seen.
One reason not to use the yearling is that the only edition of the yearling that does not have the N-word in it 17 times is the school edition, which is a collector's item.
There's a copy here on the somewhere.
Yeah. And Marjorie took it out herself. What Zora was saying, this is how people talk, nobody cares. But Marjorie cared because it was costing her sales, of course. And Adam Clayton Powell Jr. refused to have the book taught in the Brooklyn Public Schools the way it was. So this is a good reason to put The Secret River and not the...
Yeah, as fabulous as The Yearling is, it's existential, melancholic, the tone is so different from...
And it's all white people.
Yeah, and The Secret River is luminous, is so affirmative and positive and joyful, and even there's a little bit of fear and a little bit of risk, but it's so incredibly affirmative. So yeah, I agree. I think we've reached a decision on that.
Then you get into the like looking at the myth of it, or like a fable, or you compare similarities. So the older your audience, the more you can delve into the literature part of it.
What we really need is a graphic novelization of The Yearling. Why is there not a graphic novelization?
So there was one.
They don't.
That's a whole
They will
story.
not agree to that. It's
Why?
really terrible.
That's a whole article.
I talked to Sally about this, and I had an artist.
Who is they?
The literary estate, Marjorie's literary estate. They think it's going to hurt the sales of the yearling.
Mockingbird, A Wrinkle in Time, all of these have graphic novelizations now.
The artist that I was working with did very successfully A Land Remembered, Andre Fratino.
And he did our Year of the Yearling shirts.
Yes, he was the artist for the Year of the Yearling t-shirt. And, but they were not. We submitted a proposal and everything, and it's just, maybe we want to revisit that.
They were gonna regret it too, not only because it's not that art, but also Andre's new work is getting all kinds of coverage.
Thanks for that back,
Yeah, you'll be on the
back alley information, Ginger.
But the language is so specific in the writing. I mean, she identifies flora and fauna specifically and beautifully. I just don't know how you could get that.
I mean, have you read the To Kill a
It,
Mockingbird?
it's, a lot of it's there, at least in the Land Rover.
Mockingbird, I think the yearling is better written. I think it's better language with the words. And it's richer. I think it's much more,
It's lyrical.
lyrical and layered.
Lyrical.
With many different kinds of meanings for children and adults. Whereas I don't think To Kill a Mockingbird has those kinds of layers in it. It's very topical in a way, it's just very straightforward.
I think you can still have the lyrical within a graphic
You could.
novelization. I think you could make that work.
It would be a beautiful animation or graphic novel.
Why do you think anyways, I'm not. Why do you think it was Secret River instead of like the Giving River? Because I think Secret had a lot more than just the river was high, it was a special place, right? I think it was more the,
Mystical.
Yeah,
not just that, but I feel like keeping the family, the traditions of the family a secret. That's how I see it. I don't just see it as, maybe the culture was a secret. They didn't spread it. I know how I grew up Greek Orthodox and how our traditions were very much a secret for so many years. My family wouldn't pass them on to others who were not part of our culture. So.
Marty learned that from Zora. You don't give away your secrets.
Right, so.
And let's face it, the river was magical. She was never going to be able to find it again. She was never going to be able to show anybody where it was, right? So it had to be a secret.
It was there for that time for her and for what she needed to do for that point in time. And
I took it as, it was a secret that you needed like a key or a code to find. And turns out only kids have that code. So it was a secret that kids knew how to get there, but adults couldn't. And so that's why it was a secret from adults.
Secret from adults.
Yeah, but they couldn't get there, but the kids could.
isn't there something in Harry Potter that's similar?
Yeah, right.
The Secret Garden, the old classic, The Secret Garden.
Yeah, we better wrap up. Thank you all for your comments. We need to go back to the hotel and
Thank
clean
you so
up.
much for staying